Good evening and welcome to episode 252 of the Gersnet Podcast. I'm John McCallum, I'm your host tonight. Every other presenter we've got has come out on strike in sympathy with Gary Lineker tonight, so I'm afraid you're going to have to make do with myself and my fellow blackleg Stewart Weir. This is the independent Rangers podcast made for fans by fans, where the content is free. Gersnet is not just a podcast, there is a forum, there are articles, social media, there's a history archive. And if you enjoy this pod, then please subscribe, share it on social media, tell people about it. And if you don't enjoy it, then tell Frankie about it. Now, before I introduce Stuart, who of course doesn't need any introduction, can I just give a word of thanks to Forest Precision Engineering. They are a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company, and they have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many, many years. And we are delighted that they are backing the Gersnet podcast. You can find out more about Forest Precision Engineering if you go to their website, which is forestprecisioneng.com. Perhaps of more interest to you is the Forest Precision Engineering Executive Lounge, which is a stunning hospitality area within the main stand at Ibrox, and it is available. You can book that. It is a unique space, and for more information about it, you can contact the club directly via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Okay, that's the official bits out the way, Stuart. So you're on with me tonight, Stuart. Frankie clearly trying to target the younger hipster listeners tonight. Getting you and me on, getting the guys getting ready before they go out clubbing. So they've brought you and me along, and there can be no other reason for you and I to be on. How do we find you tonight, Stuart? You had a good week?
I feel like Trevor Nelson suddenly. Maybe or Gary Davis, sounds of the '80s. But no, I'm pretty good. And a bit of, if you like, positivity around the Rangers camp with a very good performance in midweek and the prospect of a Scottish Cup tie this weekend.
Absolutely. Now, before we go any further, I have to ask, what is that sticking out the wall behind your head? There is something that looks like it's just sticking out of your wall, and it's catching my eye every time I look at it, and it looks vaguely like, yes, that's exactly what it is. What is that? If you pull that, do you eject out the house? How does this work?
No, I'll show you what they actually are. They're drumsticks.
They're drumsticks.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Is the young Lanark Truth Defenders got a gig tomorrow night or something? You're getting yourself ready?
The kits are there.
It's just out of screen. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, well look, Tom, you started by talking about our performance during the week. That's a good place to start. Look, a 4-1 win at Easter Road is always welcome. I'm sure, as all of us have done over the years, I've seen us struggle there in the past. I've seen us give away daft points. I've seen us be outplayed at Easter Road in the past, but that certainly wasn't the case. A 4-1 victory, and we managed to score all 5 goals. Look, I'll cut straight to it. Was that our best performance of the season, do you think, Stuart?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was a fluidity to the Rangers' performance that I don't think we've really seen at all this season. I think, I've been interested. People I've spoken to, I'm kind of interested on their take, or was interested in their take on what they actually perceived the formation to be. And I think when you start asking people, or different people, that question, and you get different answers back, it maybe shows you that there was an openness to the Rangers' performance that people haven't really seen this season. I think, the rigidity of the kind of 4-2-3-1 formation. Well, you could say that Rangers played 2 out strikers, but then again, they both have a kind of a tendency to drift out wide. So it wasn't the sort of traditional, if you like, Brandon Miller or McCoyston and Haitley sort of formation. Yeah, but I mean, I think all in all, it was a really good performance. And I don't want to, go back over old ground here, but a couple of weeks ago before the League Cup final, I did say that I thought that that Cantwell, was here to play football, as was Raskin. And I think we are now seeing those two guys coming onto a game and play football. They can do. I don't want to go over old ground, as I say, or bring up nightmares, but I don't think there's an opportunity for Rangers in that League Cup final. I don't think they were brave enough. I really don't think they were brave enough. Maybe a bit late now, but there's still another trophy, at least one trophy to play for, and one trophy where Rangers have a real possibility of taking something, and that's the Scottish Cup. And I think the two of them coming onto a game will certainly help. In terms of any ambition that Rangers have. I do like Raskin. I've said it from day one. If you move to a club like Rangers with the opportunities that will arise there, I think he's bang up for it. I think he is really up for playing football, and that's the kind of guys you want in your team. I also think that Jack actually played well in the midfield as the sort of dominant holding role. And I think he might have looked better in that role simply because the Rangers midfield wasn't as cluttered as it is sometimes when you have maybe, Kamara and Lundstrom and the likes kicking about in the same area. He actually looked as if he had a bit of time and a bit of space to play in. And again, that might come down to the sort of formation that Rangers utilised on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I mean, Raskin's contribution to our second goal, I think overlooked by a lot of people because it was a cracking finish, a lovely run to the front post by Cholak, and then and a lovely finish. Well found by Sakala, who used his pace and for everything. But it was Raskin who won that ball. Who won that ball in midfield, and that's what you need. You need your midfield. You're going to play a game where you're closing people down quickly. You need someone like Raskin who can do it. And I can't help but look at Raskin and think, if you were 6 inches taller, you'd probably be playing for, in a better league, frankly, than the one you're playing in just now.
Just on Raskin, I said it a couple of weeks ago. These kind of things sometimes come back to haunt you, but I wasn't drawing direct comparisons or parallels, but there is something about his manner that reminds me of Paul Gascoigne. He is quite physical in terms of how he uses his upper body, namely elbows and shoulders to influence things, and he also, in terms of challenges, he's not frightened to put himself in a position where he might be kicked. He's happy to step across in front of a challenge to block the ball off and hold on to possession, which I like to see. And again, that was part of Gascoigne's game. If he's half as good as Gascoigne was at his time at Rangers, then Rangers have won a watch with this signing. But I think he's here to impress people and make a name for himself. And all in all, I think he's really he's going about it the right way. Yeah, promising start, definitely. You mentioned the lineup up front. It was an unchanged lineup from the weekend, which isn't something that we've seen a lot of at Rangers this season. There's been lots of chopping and changing, sometimes just the odd player in midfield, but that was 2 games in a row where Morelos, Kamara and Lundstrom have been on the bench. Is this our best side? Or, do you think that's the side that played at the weekend, the side that played at Easter Road so well, the side that put in, as you said, and it's hard to disagree, probably our best performance of the season, certainly, that or the Hearts, game a few weeks ago. So is that our best side, or do you think someone like Tillman is still going to walk back into that team when he's fit? I think I would always try and have Tillman in the team, because I think he's a decent player. But so who do you put him in there? Who comes in? That is the dilemma that you then have, and I think what you struck upon there about that Rangers side is that Rangers' best side. It's the best side for the last 2 games,
That's how they can pick just now.
Yeah, and I sometimes wonder, and it'll be interesting to see what the manager does in terms of having other players, back in terms of their fitness and the likes, whether he does make those changes. I actually think it would almost be making a swap or a switch for the sake of it, because as far as I could see, there was nothing wrong with either of those two performances that Rangers put together. And I sometimes think that managers make these changes because they think it's their job to make the changes, not necessarily because it'll make the team play better. And again, after 180 minutes of that same side playing, you would have to think there's a better understanding. There certainly looked to be a better understanding over the piece in midweek at Easter Road. Whether that's familiarity, I think it could well be for one or two of these guys who have not had lots of game time together. And therefore, I think they're still finding their feet in terms of, where they pick up play at certain points, where they, the different roles they fill in on occasions, whether it's defensively or to use that dreaded word, transition, moving into attack. I think they're still finding their feet a bit there. So, again, if it's worked for the last two games, and especially well against Hibs, why bother changing it?
Yeah. It's interesting you said that, and it's been overlooked a bit because it was such a comprehensive victory in the end. But actually there was, we could have scored, without exaggeration, 8. The number of times we created a chance and our final ball didn't find the right player, or found a player who didn't have the space that perhaps another player had. And that again comes with players just not quite knowing each other yet, not quite knowing where that one will be or who's going to be in that space. And when you look at that, if you can call them the kind of attacking four, if you include Cantwell in with the front three, that those four players I think have played together. I think that's the second time that the four of them have played in the same team. Certainly they've played in the same team for 90 minutes, or for the best part of 90 minutes. It's promising, it's pleasing, because you hope, they're going to build more understanding with each other as they get to know each other. That can only be a good thing. Speaking of the front
just
three,
touching upon that, was it a front three, or was it a front two, or was it a front one? Because at different times it looked as if they were adopting the sort of 2-3-1 formation, but other times again it definitely looked as if there were two strikers there with one guy behind them, and at other times it looked as if it was almost like 4-1-4-1. Now, I'm not saying, I might be over complicating things here and over reading the situation here, but for Rangers to be experimenting and trying these things out midway through a game against Hibs and it working for them, maybe shows you that there's a bit more thinking has gone on in terms of what that starting 11 is. Is that the best starting 11 that Michael Beale has actually for winning games, if you see what I mean? Is that the best team that he can put out there if he needs to make a change rather than bringing on substitutes? Is that a team that actually can adapt and adopt different tactics whilst you still have your starting 11? I think there was an element of that it almost looked as if there were guys that were interchangeable in certain positions and popped up in different positions. And again, that was pretty good to see. I wasn't quite sure whether that was just a one-off or whether it was something that actually looked as if they'd been working on.
I think Beale's done this a bit, particularly with Kent. Under Van Bronckhorst, Kent was very much playing as a kind of outside left, for want of a better expression. He was on the left side. He was playing wide, and that was his position. But under Beale, he's definitely been given more room, or more scope rather, to roam. Sakala playing on the left, he's done it before, but I wasn't expecting him to start there. When you saw the starting lineup, you assumed Kent will be on the left, Sakala will be on the right, Čolak through the middle. So I was a little surprised as the game went on and you realised, actually, that's not how we're playing. one of the kind of point I want to make here is, Čolak. I think I said it on the podcast the last time I was on, which was a few weeks ago. I think you were there as well. I said I don't know if Čolak is a Beale type of player. I don't know if he's going to fit into Beale's system. Based on the last two games, I clearly know very little. Now, anybody who's listened to this podcast at any point over the last 5 years would already know that. But there's no point in me pretending otherwise, because Čolak looked like he absolutely fitted into that system through the week. And I was a little surprised at Čolak coming back into the team when he did. For all the criticism of Rangers during the League Cup final, Morelos scored. Nobody played particularly well in that game. But he had been playing relatively well up until that point. He looked like he'd found a bit of form again. So Čolak coming back in, do you see him now? Is he our first choice number 9, do you think? Is that him? Is it his position to lose? Or do you think this is going to be again a case of chopping and changing?
Yeah, I do wonder, and this is, casting the net a bit further here, when you see what has happened at Manchester United with Weghorst, who for all intents and purposes is not a Manchester United type player and never will be a Manchester United type player, but actually does a specific role that the manager wants him to do. I just wonder if it's the same line of thought that's going into using Čolak. I do wonder whether Michael Beale has decided, we've tried various positional changes, we've tried various lineups and starters and impact players coming off the bench. I do wonder if he's actually decided we do need a focal point for our attack and we need somebody. I'm not quite saying he's an out-and-out target man that you'll hit the ball high or you'll find him in the air and look for knockdowns and all the rest of it. But he is somebody who you can find, and he is pretty decent at holding the ball up and bringing other people into play. And I wonder if that is how Michael Beale sees Rangers moving forward, with an actual attacker that everybody can identify as your target man.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think you're right. I think that is how Beale wants to play. I think that's how he had Morelos playing, it's how, from what I could see and what I could divine from the match the other night, it certainly looked like that's how Čolak was playing. But it's interesting you said it that way, because I actually didn't think that Čolak had that in his game. I think of Čolak as a penalty box striker. Mm-hmm. I think of Čolak as a guy who, if you create chances for him in the penalty box, he will score you goals. But I didn't think he had the ability to link up. I certainly didn't think he was a target. For all he's a big man. I didn't think he was particularly good as a target man, in certainly the old-fashioned sense of a target man, as somebody who's going to win you that ball, hold it up, win you a free kick.
I think that's slightly misleading. I could be wrong. I think it's slightly misleading. The title of target man, people think it's a big guy up front that you bang the ball up to and he'll head it off, or
someone try and get on the knock-ons. No, I appreciate that's not the type of player that Beale would. It's not the type of football Beale wants to play.
He's the kind of guy though that you can see. I think he's more visible, maybe because of his stature, and maybe because he actually runs around a lot more than Morelos. Somebody else agrees with me there as well. But it's
I tried to mute there just at the right time. Someone's come to my front door and the German Shepherd's going bonkers just now, and there's nobody else in. So
I do wonder if sometimes I'll get attacked as well. Anyway, but no, I mean it's. I do wonder whether he's got a presence, and I think that's a better sort of maybe use of a particular word. The presence of somebody who others can play through, and also I might be, people might disagree. I don't think he becomes lazy during games. I don't think he hides as much as maybe sometimes as Morelos did. Morelos, you can see balls getting played into spaces, and Morelos I would say Morelos chucked it. He decided very early on whether he was going to chase something or whether he was going to run into a position that somebody wanted it. Whereas I think with the likes of Cholak, I think he actually is willing to make those runs and pressurise defenders in a particular way that means that he'll get to the ball first and then introduce other players in the game.
Yeah, and of course, rumours today, unsubstantiated as far as I know, but rumours today that Morelos is close to signing a pre-contract with Seville was the rumour that was put out. I have no idea if there's any truth in that at all, or whether that's just one of these things on the internet. So, Morelos, there is a good chance Morelos won't be an option for us for much longer anyway. And Cholak had such a good start to the season. Whatever when we look back at our summer signings, and I think Tillman has obviously come good. But beyond that, I think there was a lot of head scratching and criticism and rightful criticism about some of the players we brought in the summer. But actually, I think because Cholak had got injured, we'd forgotten actually just what a good start to the season he had. And just how important a player he was. Now, moving down the team a little bit, you mentioned it at the start, Raskin and Cantwell, a lot's been made about them coming in, high expectations for them, and they both really played well, I thought, on Wednesday night, and I thought they also both showed well against Kilmarnock at the weekend. But for me, the person that really shone in midfield was Ryan Jack. I think you mentioned that yourself. Jack's obviously been with us now, it's kind of 5 seasons, I think it's coming up for. He's out of contract in the summer. He has injury problems. I'm not convinced Ryan Jack can play 2 games a week. I think he can do a Saturday. I'm not sure he can do Saturday, Wednesday. That won't be as big a problem in the run-in to the title this year because there isn't European football, unfortunately. But on that showing, do you give him a new contract? Is he somebody you gamble on and say, right, you know what, if we can get 25 games a season from him, he is worth a new contract? Or do you think it's just a case of, well, I'm sorry, yes, you are a very good player when fit, but your fitness is not good enough?
Yeah. Let's not limit that conversation to just him.
I'm mentioning just him because he played a really good game the other night and you just remembered how good he is.
But you might catch my drift here that if you have that conversation with him, who else do you have that conversation with? Because there's a number of players at Rangers and have been for the last couple of seasons. We learned today or yesterday that Roof is out, and for the rest of the remainder of the season. Now, when he signed for Rangers, I had it in pretty good authority that both from Belgium and from guys that had watched them regularly at Leeds United, that if he played 1 in every 4 games, you'd have done well. And I don't know what the figures are, but it doesn't seem any more than 1 in 4 games. If you
certainly not 1 in 4 this season. He had the title-winning season. He was a really important player.
He was,
and we've missed him since then as well. We have missed him.
So I think if I've kind of opened that debate up to myself, if you like, because I'm still answering your first question. Do I think that Jack is worthy of a contract? On the last couple of performances, it might sway it and say yes, but if I looked at it, in the cold light of day and over a piece, I would think that there might be better players out there that could be had for similar wages who might actually be able to give you 2 games a week, rather than almost like playing selective matches. And it's a hard one, it's a tough one, but I think all in all, I don't think it's frustrating that you see him playing in the way he has played, and the goal he scored in the cup final last season, and that's the kind of player you want, but you don't always get that every week, and sometimes you don't get it for several weeks because he's not fit.
No. I mean, the fitness is the only thing about Jack. That's been the only thing about Jack that you could make any complaints about in most of his time at Rangers. Another thing about Jack, of course, is that he is out of contract. Unlike Roof, he is out of contract in the summer. Whatever we want to do with Roof, he's under contract, so he doesn't have to go anywhere. Whereas Jack is out of contract. And the other thing that goes in Jack's favour when it comes to contract is his nationality.
Yeah.
And the need to have a certain number of homegrown players in the squad. Jack ticks a couple of boxes there for us. So I suppose if he can maintain a level of fitness, then perhaps a 1 or 2 year contract it may well be offered. However, at his age, he may be looking for longer than that. He may be looking for more security. So I guess we'll just have to see. But I guess at the bottom line in all this, Stuart, is it's down to him. If he keeps playing
absolutely.
the way he's playing, then this becomes a moot conversation because there's no way the club won't offer him a contract.
Yeah.
If he's managed to get his injury worries behind him, then I don't imagine anybody will be more pleased about that than Ross Wilson and Michael Beale, because he would be a headache to replace. Because he is a very good player in that position.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you there. But I think what he contributes when fit is sizable. And for the other, tick boxes that you mentioned there, you're absolutely spot on with that. But I do wonder that there are very few players who might be injury prone, who then become less injury prone as they get older. Yeah.
That's very true. Actually, it's very true. We've mentioned that the game on Wednesday, the game against Hearts, probably our best performances, certainly domestically our best performances this season. Let me put it to you, do you think that's simply because we were away from home and Hearts and Hibs both kind of came out and played? Both, played relatively expansive formations and that played into our strengths. Our closing down game was very good against both of them. We didn't give them time to settle in the ball at all. And the like you mentioned, it's like the fluidity of the team, the speed at which we were moving the ball around. It simply suited us. It suited our style. It suited the type of players we've got. But do you think there's more to this? Do you think we've got players in our team who prefer it away from home, where there's less scrutiny? Do you think we've got players who are a bit intimidated by actually playing at Ibrox just now?
That's the COVID question, isn't it? Did Rangers win the title when there was nobody at Ibrox because some of the players actually played better when nobody was on their back? Or is it the fact that when teams come to Ibrox, they literally set up with 2 banks of 4, fixed bayonets, and it's like a scene from Rock's Drift, because they'll hit you in the break, but most of the time they're there not.
Most of the time, some of them are not even interested in doing that. Frankly, they're just happy just come and try and get a point, and maybe get a set piece later.
I think there might have been an element actually of the two Edinburgh teams thinking to themselves, this is an opportunity to turn in a performance against Rangers, and maybe off the back of not being quite sure what kind of Rangers side will turn up or what kind of performance level they'll produce. And I think they left themselves slightly open. Maybe they did get a wee bit too cocky in taking it to Rangers and thinking, right, let's have a go at them here. And they were punished because of that, especially in midweek. I don't think there'd been a single. In fact, I know, having spoken to a couple, I don't think there'd been a single Hibs fan who'd have been shocked, surprised, amazed, or disgruntled had Rangers taken 5, 6, or 7 off Hibs the other night.
Definitely not. No, Hibs were poor. I mean, I know we're here to talk about Rangers, and Rangers played well, and in many ways didn't let Hibs play, but Hibs were poor. I have to say that was a poor Hibs team, I thought.
I mentioned off air before we come on, that the thing that kind of slightly shocked me or worried me was Hibs are on league form, and if you look at the league table, are the fourth best team in Scotland, and Rangers, who have had numerous problems this season, took them apart. Systematically took them apart, and it could have been a whole lot worse for Hibs. So I don't think that Hibs team. I think finally Rangers turned in a performance that makes you question just how good Hibs actually were, and I don't think they were very good.
No, they weren't at all. Okay, moving forward a bit. I don't know if you saw it at the weekend. This amazing statistic that came out of the weekend about Arsenal. Don't know if you came across that or not, but there was a great statistic came out of the weekend that Saturday's starting lineup for Arsenal was the first time since 1986 that a player who featured under Arsene Wenger hadn't started in the team, which is an incredible stat. Since 1986, it's I was still at school in 1986. It got me thinking about what is the Rangers equivalent to that. I don't know if you had a chance to think about that, Stuart, but let me throw a couple at you. In 1907, Rangers signed a player called Jimmy Gordon. Jimmy Gordon is in the Hall of Fame. Jimmy Gordon, 10 caps for Scotland at a time when Scotland, I think, played 2 games a year. Yeah. Jimmy Gordon was an astonishing player. I was reading a little bit about him. He played up front, he played in midfield, he played in defence, and he played in goal for Rangers first team during his career. Not many players can say that.
Yeah.
And his last game for Rangers was actually a benefit match, a testimonial, a benefit match for another Rangers player, Bet Manderson. But that was Jimmy Gordon's last game for Rangers. That also was Bill Struth's first game in charge of Rangers. So he played under Bill Struth. Fast forward to 1966 and Eric Caldo's final game for Rangers was 1966, and Eric Caldo has signed by Bill Struth and played under Bill Struth towards the end of his career. So I reckon that's probably our longest connection between players and a manager. But I can't say that there was somebody played in every single game in between those times. I can't. Yeah. I didn't go into it in that depth. More recently, Davy Cooper. Mm-hmm. Davy Cooper signed in 1977. Davy Cooper was at the club when Walter Smith was there, not as manager, but certainly when he was there as assistant. And Alan McGregor, who is still playing today. Dog's not happy with this stat.
No.
Alan McGregor, who's still playing today, obviously played under Walter Smith. And he's still playing for Rangers today. So again, that's quite a distance. And unfortunately he didn't play, but Derek Johnston signed Rangers in 1970, was still at the club when Smith and Souness came in, but he didn't, as far as I can tell, he didn't play it. Souness, Smith really took Rangers for a Glasgow Cup final against Celtic. And they beat them 3-2. McCoy's got a hat-trick.
McCoy's got a new contract off the back of that.
That's right. But I don't think Derek Johnson played in that game. So I don't think he did play. But if he had, then that would have stretched that to from 1970 through to the current day. So have you any thoughts on that? Is there anybody you think that might come into that category?
McGregor and the two for me would have been McGregor and Derek Johnson. Davy Cooper. Now you mentioned it, it wasn't so much. It wasn't really an afterthought. It was his longevity. But no, you're right. I mean, and again, I think those kind of players are going to really diminish. They have diminished. And
we'll see that
the McGregor one. There's almost if you like, an excuse or a reason for it because he's a goalkeeper. You maybe have that kind of longevity with goalkeepers who are a permanent fixture. And I still go back to the thing that I've said for weeks and months, that in terms of recruitment, that is the one position that Rangers have got to get it absolutely bang on and do it very, very quickly. But no, I mean, Derek Johnson was a kind of permanent fixture. He had that brief flirtation with, Chelsea and
he was doing it at Chelsea,
and the likes. But and again, I think as a striker, as a goal scorer, I think, if he hadn't been such a good player as a centre back, or if he'd focused on one rather than the other, I mean, he could have had an amazing number of goals for Rangers, or he could have been a team that you actually built a Rangers side. Because as a centre back, I mean, I thought early 70s, Derek Johnson, and for Scotland as well at that particular point in time, was outstanding. Up to
78 World Cup, Derek Johnson was just, and Johnson's one of these players who I think his achievements as a player have been diminished by his his kind of career, if you like, post playing, where he's, he's maybe not as serious, perhaps not quite as articulate, something of the kind of clown while he's being ready. I don't mean that. I don't mean that to be derogatory. Obviously, it did sound a bit derogatory, but he playing that slightly, the kind of, not being the serious one. You're trying to have a quick ball all the time, and I think in some ways that has affected people's perception of Johnson. And if you actually look at the stats of Derek Johnson
was clinical
and
at times.
Talk to people who played about him, what a football player Derek Johnson was.
I spoke to a couple of players at that time, and for various articles and things, and to a man, they always said that Derek Johnson was a far better player than he ever get credit for, simply because
I would agree with that.
Of all the facets that he had. I mean, he could hit a ball, from a standing position, on the volley, on the turn, taking, controlling the ball and putting it away. And his prowess in the air was absolutely, incredible. And, and Gordon's conversation once with sort of Gordon Smith, Gordon said it was made easy for him playing because Derek Johnson did so much of the work. Now,
Derek Johnson was the target man. Derek Johnson was a guy who could win the ball in the air, he could hold the ball up, he could put the ball in. Look, we'll need to run on because I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious that Frankie will probably cut us off if we don't get moving. Or else I could just sit here and talk about Derek Johnson all night.
Blame it the dog barking.
Raith Rovers on Sunday, the Scottish Cup, and the thing that sprung to mind, Raith Rovers, it's been perishing cold in Glasgow all week, and then I look at the forecast for Sunday and I see it's going to rain. Do you think the person who coined the phrase "the magic of the cup" had Raith Rovers in March in mind when they said that? It's not the glamour tie. It's not something that we're all going to get particularly excited about. The last time Raith Rovers played us in the cup at Ibrox, they beat us. They put us out. Back in the dark days when we were in the Championship and struggling to get out of it. And there were protests going on at that time, trying to get rid of the board. A very different Rangers now. Raith Rovers aren't in good form just now, Stuart. They were well beaten by Partick Thistle at the weekend. In fact, Raith Rovers haven't actually won a match in the league since early February, and their only victory in that time, ironically, was against Motherwell in the Cup. What kind of match should we expect on Sunday? What do you think the game will be like?
I don't see Raith Rovers being expansive at all. I think they'll try and hold out for as long as possible against Rangers. But by the same token, I think this will be more to do with how Rangers approach this. If Rangers get into their stride early on, then there will be no problems I think if they toil and huff and puff and struggle a bit, then it could be a difficult game. But I still see this as a game that Rangers should win comfortably. I think I've got too much firepower for a start. And they've also got too many, if you like, options where goals can come from. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that, I think the odds are radically reduced for Rangers getting a penalty to give them a starter for 10, as Bamber Gascoigne would say.
A friend told me through the week that Alan Rough apparently said that the penalty shouldn't have been a penalty because it was the penalty on Wednesday. It shouldn't have been a penalty because it was an accident. It's like, okay. Yeah. I think the other. I mean, just joking aside, the one thing I will say about the amount of penalties that Rangers get just shows you how much they actually play in the opposition box. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's why they're awarded so many penalties. But no, I think Rangers, it should be focused in this game, heads down, get the job done, and give the I wouldn't even say make it a crowd pleaser. I think it would just be get the job done. I'm reminded of Scottish Cup ties, quarter-final ties in the Scottish Cup at Ibrox over the years, and I remember one which was the sleetiest, wettest, coldest, windiest days, and get to Ibrox to watch them against Hamilton Accies, and Rangers I think won 5-1, and it was just numbingly cold, and it didn't give me any pleasure with the Accies getting beat 5-1, but it was the kind of, I don't even think that would have warmed anybody's cockles that day. I think it was just absolutely miserable.
Rangers aren't hiding to nothing. If they win 7-0, people will say, well, that was expected. If we struggle, then they'll get criticised. It's one of these games, you're right, they need the early goal. Beale said in his press conference today that he intends to pick his strongest side. Do you expect any changes at all from Wednesday night?
Not unless he tries to use or utilise Tillman, and whether that's as a starter or off the bench or whatever. I think actually he might go with this team again to prove a point that he's not a kind of a guy who makes changes for the sake of changing, but also the fact that for those available, this is his best team, and it might also be a message. Touching upon something we mentioned earlier on, it might also be a message to other players who maybe haven't contributed the way they should have done, that you're not just waltzing back into this team. This is the level of performance I expect from my team, and if you're going to come in, this is what you have to do and how you have to do it. So there may be a number of ulterior motives, let's say, from the manager in playing the same starting 11 3 games in the spin.
I would not be surprised if Jack doesn't play. Simply because I think, even if he is fit, I wouldn't be surprised if he decides to rest him and keep him for the league. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jack doesn't play, and if we may go with another slightly more creative midfielder rather than an all-sitting midfielder. They may feel that Raskin sitting is enough to play against Raith Rovers. It's hard to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jack doesn't play and they choose to play another midfielder instead of Jack, just to give him a rest. Very quickly, there was a rare sighting of Matondo on the bench on Wednesday night. A frustrating player, an expensive player in terms of in real terms, in terms of what it's cost us. Beale has said today in his press conference that the Rangers squad is too large at the minute. Guys like Matondo, do you think they have a future at Rangers? It's interesting to see what he's done with Sakala. Now, Sakala had good moments last season. Sakala had good moments under Van Bronckhorst. But I think he's currently playing the best football he's played since he joined Rangers. In the last couple of months, I think Beale has found a way of working with Sakala. I'm not I'm not necessarily comparing Sakala and Matondo, other than they're both players who have struggled a bit their finishing is poor, their decision making wasn't great, and I think Sakala's decision making still could be improved, but their decision making isn't always great. You can see there's ability there. There's certainly speed. So there are similarities in their similarities in their type of football, albeit they are different types of players. Matondo's also very young. You're certainly inexperienced. He hasn't played a lot of first team football. Do you think there's a future for him? And to kind of round off the night, who do you think will be leaving? Who do you think will be making this squad lighter in the summer?
I think, we touched upon Morelos. A couple of years ago, it would have almost been unthinkable for Morelos just to walk out the door. And back then, if he was walking out the door, Rangers were going to be picking anything from 9 to 10 to 12 million quid for him, or whatever it might have been worth. I think right at this minute in time, I don't think many would be shedding tears. I may be a bit strong, but I think at times he's looked disinterested. And if you can look disinterested in one game and then suddenly look as if your life depended on it the next game, you do wonder what's going on in his head. The whole thing about the Rangers squad, and I do wonder what size of squad Michael Beale actually has, because when you take into account all the injuries, at times it's been a good thing that they have had so many players available to them.
Yeah, that's true.
Otherwise, you could have been absolutely threadbare. I'm equally, I'm reminded of the whole squad size that a certain, Mr. Warburton thought he could get away with, and thinking again, this is Scottish football. Even taking into account suspensions, that will never be enough players to see you through the season. So I think there needs to be a trimming of the squad in certain areas. I think one or two, if offers come in, I think Rangers would readily look at it simply because they want to strengthen elsewhere and bring in their own players, so to speak. So I'd see maybe 2, 3, 4, maybe being top of the list to leave. Again, we're back to the whole situation, aren't we? The whole Barisic question. Where's he going? Is he going? Is he popular? Is he not popular? Are they trying to replace him? If they did replace him, would he want to leave? I think you and I could speak for another hour and a half on the possibilities of that. The one thing I will say is that the goalkeeping situation, and I keep banging on about it, is one that needs to be sorted sooner rather than later. I don't see.
Yeah, I think that too. I think I could see McLaughlin and McGregor both leaving this summer.
Yeah, I could as well, and that would leave you in a situation where all of a sudden you've got somebody coming in as a number one with a possible another number two, who you don't know what he's like, simply because you don't know what the number one's like. If you see what I mean, I do know what you mean. Yeah, two guys starting afresh. I don't think you're going to see anybody like Chris Woods coming in and Nicky Walker hanging around because he's getting the same contract as what Chris Woods has. I don't think that's going to sit. Another thing is about McCrory. Is he good enough? Is he not good enough? If he's not good enough and you can't make up your mind, let the guy go.
Yeah, well, that's 3 managers now that have chosen not to play him. At a time when they could have brought him in because the first choice wasn't doing as well as we'd all expect him to do. So I think that tells its own story. Strangely, when he did get the chance last season, when he came in when we had a goalkeeping crisis, I thought he did pretty well. So it's a strange one. Goalkeepers mature late. I think we've all seen that with goalkeepers that can be their mid-20s before they kind of reach the point where they've got all the daft mistakes out of their system and things. So again, we'll just have to see. McGregor and McLaughlin again both have the fact they're Scottish. We'll have that again, which definitely helps. But we'll see. Look, I think we've done 51 minutes, so slightly longer than Frankie asked us to do, but significantly longer than Morelos put into most of his recent matches. So listen, thanks for coming on tonight, Stuart. Appreciate you giving up your drumming practice. I'll let you go back and annoy your neighbours. Just to remind everybody that if you're listening just now, you're listening live, that's fantastic. If you're on catch up, remember you can get us on Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher and Spotify. There is a podcast on Sunday night. I believe it is Colin, Craig and Dougie, assuming that one of them isn't whipped down to London to take Gary Lineker's place at the BBC, because I don't think anyone else is taking those positions. And they'll be on just to see if Stuart and I have been talking rubbish about Sunday or not, and anything else that might well happen over this weekend. So please join them if you have a chance. And again, remember that Gersnet is available. It's not just the podcast. We have the forums and the main website, or if you go to www.gersnet.co.uk. All it leaves for me is to wish you all a very pleasant weekend. And here's hoping we're in the next round of the Cup to come this time on Sunday night. Thank you and good night.